Evander, I will make chicken soup for you today.
After catching her son chewing raw chicken, the terrified mother sensed something was terribly wrong. Desperate for answers, she searched online and found the name of a famous exorcist pastor. But she never expected that when she opened the door again, a black man appeared. She looked at him with contempt and said,
Are you in the wrong place? I don't welcome black people.
Ma'am, I came here to destroy a demon.
As soon as he finished speaking, the priest sensed a demon inside the house. Ignoring the woman's contempt, he stepped in anyway to perform the ritual and destroy it.
Mom, Dad, help me, please!
After hearing their son's agony, the couple immediately destroyed the ritual.
I already told you. Those black people are no different from devils. Get the fuck out of here and don't harm my son!
They didn't know that the moment the priest left would be when they would come to regret it. 6 years ago, Odelia Rollins had bought her son a run-down wooden house on the outskirts of West Texas for only $45,000. She had called it a bargain, a smart move. She hadn't cared about the vague rumors surrounding the property or why the previous owner had fled in the middle of the night. All she cared about was that her son would finally have a place of his own. Now, Chief. 6 years later, Odelia was driving back to that same house with a bag of groceries and a freshly plucked chicken. She had no idea she was about to witness the most horrifying moment of her life. The front door was unlocked. She pushed it open and stepped inside, calling out, "Evander? It's Mom. I brought you some food." The house was dark and smelled of rot and something metallic. She set the grocery bag on the kitchen counter and lifted the chicken. "Evander, I got you a fresh chicken. I'll make you some soup." From the deepest shadows at the back of the house, something moved. Evander lunged out of the darkness like a wild animal. He grabbed the chicken from her hands and slammed it onto the wooden floor. With terrifying strength, he tore into the bird with his bare hands. Feathers flew everywhere. Blood sprayed across his face and shirt as he ripped the wings off and tore open its chest. He lowered his head and bit into the raw flesh, chewing loudly, swallowing chunks of meat and bone while blood ran down his chin and dripped onto the floor. Odelia screamed. She stumbled backward, knocking over the grocery bag. Eggs shattered. Milk spilled across the floorboards. She kept screaming as her son, or whatever was inside him, continued devouring the chicken alive, tearing strips of flesh with his teeth. Evander finally lifted his head. His eyes were completely white. No pupils, no irises, just two milky, glistening orbs. Blood coated his mouth and chin. He looked straight at his mother and smiled, a wide, unnatural grin that stretched his face too far. When he spoke, the voice that came out was high-pitched and wrong, nothing like her son's. The cheap gift. It crooned, blood dripping from its lips. Taste so good. Odelia ran. She drove home in a state of pure panic, crying and shaking so badly she could barely keep the truck on the road. She couldn't tell her husband what she had seen. Thaddeus would call the police or drag their son to a hospital. This wasn't something doctors could fix. This was something else. She locked herself in the bedroom, pulled out her old laptop, and searched with trembling fingers. Real Exorcist Texas actual results. Most results were scams or loud YouTube preachers. But one name kept appearing in serious threads. Jericho Kincaid, former pastor, specialized in deliverance and spiritual warfare. A few people claimed he had cast out real demons from their homes. There were no clear photos on the site and no mention of race. She only knew his name. She assumed he was white. If she had known he was black, she never would have contacted him. She typed quickly, "My son is possessed." He tore apart a live chicken with his hands and ate it raw in front of me. "Please help. I will pay whatever you ask." She hit send before she could change her mind. The next afternoon, A rusted blue and white pickup truck rolled into her driveway. Delia was waiting on the porch with a shotgun. When the driver stepped out, she froze for a second. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and black. Late 30s or early 40s. He wore a worn black leather jacket and carried a canvas bag. His face was calm as he looked at the house. Odelia stood up, her face twisting with shock and disgust. "Stop right there!" she shouted, raising the shotgun. "Who the hell are you?" "Jericho Kincaid," he replied calmly. "You messaged me." Odelia stared at him from head to toe, her expression filled with contempt and revulsion. She felt her face flush with anger. "You're black," she spat. "You're a fucking black man. I didn't know you were black." "If I had known, I never would messaged you to come to my house." Jericho didn't react. He simply stood there. Odelia's voice grew louder and more vicious. "All you people are filthy. You're lazy, you lie, and you're always looking for ways to get into white people's houses so you can rob us or rape our women. Do you think I'm stupid? What the fuck are you planning to do once you get inside? Kill my son and steal our house? Or are you planning to rape me too? You black bastards are all jealous of decent white families like ours. You're always trying to destroy what we built." She took a step forward, still holding the shotgun. "My son doesn't need some dirty black man pretending to be a preacher to save him. We're God-fearing white people. I'm not letting you step foot in my house. Get the fuck off my property, you black piece of shit. You're just another nigger trying to worm your way into a white family's home." Jericho remained completely calm. He slowly lifted his head and took a long breath through his nose, as if tasting the air. When he opened his eyes again, his gaze was sharp and focused. "Mrs. Rawlins," he said quietly, "whatever is inside your house doesn't care about skin color. It's hungry. It's been feeding on your son for 6 years. I can smell the death on this place from the road. If I don't go in, your boy will be dead before morning. Don't you fucking lie to me!" Odelia screamed, raising the shotgun higher. "You just want to get inside so you can rob us, so you can kill my son. That's what your kind does. Stop pretending you give a damn. Get the hell off my land." Jericho looked her straight in the eyes. His voice stayed steady. "I'm not leaving." He started walking toward the house. Odelia raised the shotgun, but he didn't stop. He moved past her with surprising speed and stepped through the open front door. Odelia spun around, screaming after him. "You son of a bitch! You dare walk into my house? I'll shoot you. You filthy black bastard!" Jericho didn't turn back. He walked into the dark living room and stopped in the middle of the floor. He tilted his head upward, listening to something only he could hear. The air inside the house suddenly grew heavier and colder. From deep within the shadows, a high, thin, unnatural laugh echoed softly, a sound that didn't belong to any human throat. Odelia stood frozen on the porch, shotgun still in her hands, tears streaming down her face. She had let a black man walk into her home. She had begged him to come. And now he was inside. She didn't know what to do next. All she knew was that whatever was laughing in the darkness was very, very angry that its meal was being threatened. Odelia Rawlins stood frozen on the wooden porch, her hands still gripping the shotgun so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't dare wipe them away. Inside the house, that high, mocking laugh rang out again, thin, unnatural, and filled with cruel delight. It didn't sound like her son. It sounded like something that had been waiting a very long time to be heard. She couldn't bring herself to step inside. But she also couldn't run. Inside the dark living room, Chief Jericho Kincaid stood perfectly still in the center of the room. He hadn't turned on any lights. He simply stood there, head slightly tilted upward, listening to something only he could hear. The temperature in the house had dropped sharply. A thick metallic stench, like old blood and rotting meat, grew stronger, clinging to the air. Teeth. The wind outside whistled through the gaps in the boarded-up windows, sounding almost like distant whispers. From the kitchen area, where the torn carcass of the chicken still lay in a pool of blood, came a faint scraping sound. It wasn't human footsteps. Whatever was moving did so too quickly and too lightly, accompanied by the soft click of claws against the wooden floor. Jericho slowly turned. His voice was low and steady when he spoke. "Demon, I know you're here. I can smell you from the road." A high-pitched laugh answered him from the shadows. This time it was louder, closer. It wasn't Evander's voice. It was shrill and gleeful, like a child laughing in a graveyard at midnight. Odelia heard it clearly from the porch and shuddered violently. She clutched the shotgun until her fingers ached. The image of her son tearing into the raw chicken flashed through her mind. Those milky white eyes, the blood running down his chin. And now that same thing was laughing at the black man she had accidentally invited into her home. She regretted everything. She regretted searching online. She regretted sending that message. If she had known Jericho Kincaid was black, she never would have contacted him. She had always prided herself on being a smart white woman who knew how to seize opportunities. Now she only felt stupid and powerless. Inside, Jericho remained calm. He didn't move back. His voice stayed even, carrying a strange weight. "You've held this body for too long. It's time for you to leave." The laughter suddenly twisted into a furious scream. From the darkness, Evander lunged forward with terrifying speed. He didn't run like a normal person. He moved low to the ground, almost crawling, his neck twisted at an impossible angle. Blood from the chicken still stained his mouth and chin. His white eyes locked onto Jericho with pure hatred. Evander shrieked in that high, unnatural voice. "Black man, how dare you come here? You think you can save him? He's already mine." Jericho didn't retreat. He simply raised his right hand, palm facing Evander, and spoke a phrase in Old Latin. His voice wasn't loud, but every word carried centuries of conviction. Evander froze mid-lunge as if an invisible wall had slammed into him. He screamed, clutching his head with both hands as his body convulsed violently. The skin on his face and neck twitched and bulged, as though something was moving underneath it. Odelia heard her son's screams from the porch and felt her heart lurch. She wanted to run inside, but her legs refused to move. She was terrified, disgusted by the black man standing in her house, and yet, for the first time in years, she felt completely helpless against whatever had taken her son. At that moment, the sound of Thaddeus's old pickup truck came rumbling down the dirt road. Headlights swept across the porch as he pulled in. He stepped out carrying a bag of groceries and immediately saw his wife standing there with the shotgun and a terrified expression. "Odelia, what the hell are you doing with that gun? What's going on?" Delia turned to him, her voice shaking and her face streaked with tears. There's a black man. He's already inside. I didn't invite him. He just walked in. Our son. He's not our son anymore. Thaddeus. I saw it. He tore a live chicken apart with his hands and ate it raw. That's not Evander in there. Thaddeus stared at her like she had lost her mind. A black man? You contacted a black man? Are you out of your damn mind, Odelia? Why the hell would you do something that stupid? Before she could answer, the high, mocking laugh echoed from inside the house again, louder this time. Thaddeus whipped his head toward the dark doorway. He dropped the grocery bag on the porch and clenched his fists. Evander, son, where are you? He pushed past Odelia and stepped into the house without waiting for a reply. Odelia followed behind him, still holding the shotgun, though her hands were shaking too badly to aim properly. Inside, Thaddeus stopped dead at the sight before him. Evander was on the floor, clutching his head and writhing as if something was breaking his bones from the inside. Jericho Kincaid stood a few feet away, one hand still raised, quietly speaking in Latin. The air around them felt distorted, heavy and freezing cold. Thaddeus charged forward, his voice a furious roar. "Who the hell are you? Why are you in my house? What are you doing to my son?" Jericho turned to face him, his voice calm but firm. "My name is Jericho Kincaid. Your wife contacted me. What's inside your son isn't an illness. It's an entity, and it's very hungry." Thaddeus looked Jericho up and down with open hostility and contempt. He took another step forward, his voice dripping with anger. "Get the fuck out of my house right now. I don't need some black man sticking his nose in my family's business. Who the hell do you think you are? Walking into a white man's home like you own the place. Are you here to rob us? Or are you planning to kill my son?" Odelia stood behind her husband, her voice trembling but still laced with bitterness. "I already told you. I didn't know he was black. If I had known, I never would have messaged him. He's already inside now. Just do something." Thaddeus turned to glare at his wife, his expression a mixture of disbelief and fury. "What the hell were you thinking, Odelia? You invited a black man into our home? Do you want him to rob us blind?" Before either of them could say more, Evander let out a blood-curdling scream. He lifted his head, those milky white eyes locking onto Jericho. His voice shifted between his own and the high, unnatural tone of the demon possessing him. "Dad, help me! He's burning me! Don't let him stay here!" But then the demonic voice cut in, mocking and cruel. "Don't listen to him, you stupid white man. He wants to kill your son so he can steal your house. That's what black people do." Thaddeus panicked. He rushed forward to pull his son away from Jericho. But Evander suddenly turned and sank his teeth into his father's hand. Thaddeus roared in pain and stumbled back. Blood poured from the bite wound. Odelia screamed. She raised the shotgun but didn't dare fire, terrified of hitting her son. Jericho moved quickly. He pulled a wooden cross from his bag and pressed it firmly against Evander's forehead while speaking louder in Latin. Evander shrieked as his body convulsed violently. Dark veins began to appear under the skin of his neck and face, writhing like living things beneath the surface. Jericho turned to the Rollins couple, his voice steady but commanding. "I need space and quiet. You can stay or leave, but if you want to save your son, don't interfere. This thing has held him for too long. It won't give him up easily." Thaddeus cradled his bleeding hand, staring at Jericho with a storm of emotions, rage, fear, and unwilling disbelief. He looked at his son writhing on the floor, then at the black man standing in the middle of his home like he belonged there. Odelia remained near the door, shotgun still in her trembling hands. She watched Jericho kneel and begin pulling items from his bag. Salt, white chalk, and an old leather-bound book. A strange feeling twisted inside her chest. She hated this man. She hated that he was black and in her house. But for the first time in years, she felt a tiny, unwanted spark of hope that he might actually be able to save her son. She refused to admit it, even to herself. She just wanted him gone. From the shadows, the thing possessing Evander began to whisper. The voice was high and mocking, echoing throughout the entire house. "Black man, you really think you can save him? He's been mine for a long time. His mother's greed gave him to me. That cheap house, her precious bargain. I was already here before they ever bought this place." Jericho didn't look up. He spoke quietly, his voice firm and unwavering. "You will not have him." The house suddenly shuddered with a low, ominous creak, as if something was scratching at the walls from the inside. The temperature dropped even further. Odelia shivered despite the warmth outside. Thaddeus looked around the dark house with wild eyes. He whispered to his wife, his voice hoarse. Do you think he can actually save our boy?" Odelia didn't answer. She only gripped the shotgun tighter and stared at Jericho as he prepared his tools. For the first time in many years, She had no idea who to trust. In the darkness, the demon continued whispering, its voice growing louder and clearer. "You won't save him. He already belongs to me." Jericho stood up, the wooden cross still in his hand. He looked down at Evander, shaking on the floor, then turned to face the Rollins couple. His voice was low, but carried absolute resolve. "Tonight is going to be very long. Do you want to save your son or not?" Odelia and Thaddeus looked at each other. The air inside the house was so heavy it was difficult to breathe. The demon's whispers continued echoing through the shadows, waiting for their answer. Outside, the Texas wind began to howl louder, carrying with it a cold, mournful sound like the crying of trapped souls. Jericho Kincaid moved through the dark house with quiet purpose. The air felt thick and wrong, like breathing through wet cloth. Every few steps, the temperature dropped another few degrees. He could hear it, the demon, whispering just at the edge of hearing, mocking him in that high, childlike voice. He stopped in front of the door to Evander's room. The wooden boards that had once sealed the windows from the inside were now cracked and splintered. "Chief, something had been trying to get out, or something had been trying to get in." Jericho pushed the door open. The room was even colder than the rest of the house. The air smelled of old blood, sweat, and something sulfurous. In the far corner, Evander sat curled into a ball, arms wrapped around his knees, rocking slightly. His skin was pale and clammy. For a brief second, his eyes looked almost normal, brown and terrified. "Help me," Evander whispered, voice hoarse. "Please, it's eating me from the inside." Before Jericho could answer, the air in front of him tore open. A massive black shadow lunged straight at his face. It had no clear shape, just a writhing mass of darkness with a gaping mouth full of jagged teeth. The thing screamed in a voice that shook the walls. "Get out!" The force of it slammed into Jericho like a physical blow. For a moment, the entire room seemed to tilt. The shadow's mouth stretched wide enough to swallow him whole. Jericho didn't move. He stood perfectly still, eyes steady, one hand raised with the wooden cross. The illusion shattered like broken glass, dissolving into black smoke that vanished before it touched the floor. The room fell silent again. Evander let out a weak sob from the corner. It was lying. It always lies. Jericho nodded once. "I know." He knelt on the dirty floor and began working quickly. From his canvas bag, he pulled out a thick line of coarse salt and started pouring it in a wide circle around himself and Evander. Then, he took a piece of white chalk and began drawing intricate symbols inside the circle, old protective sigils mixed with the marks of binding and banishment. The chalk scraped against the wooden floor with a dry, rasping sound. Outside the room, Odelia and Thaddeus stood in the hallway, watching through the open door. Odelia still held the shotgun, though she had lowered it. Her face was pale and streaked with dried tears. Thaddeus's hand was wrapped in a dirty towel, blood already soaking through from where Evander had bitten him. "What the hell is he doing?" Thaddeus muttered. Odelia didn't answer. She was staring at Jericho with a complicated mixture of hatred and desperate hope. Inside the circle, Jericho finished the last symbol and stood up. He placed 4 small white candles at the cardinal points of the circle and lit them one by one. The flames burned steady and unnaturally bright. He looked down at Evander. "I'm going to start the rite of cleansing. It will hurt. The demon will fight. But I need you to hold on." Evander nodded weakly. "Just make it stop." Jericho opened his old leather-bound book and began to read in Latin. His voice was calm, deep, and rhythmic. The words rolled through the room like heavy stones. As soon as the first lines left his mouth, Evander's body jerked violently. The demon roared through him. Evander's back arched so far it looked like his spine would snap. His mouth opened wide, wider than should have been possible. And that high, mocking voice poured out, "Mom, Dad, help me. He's burning me. He's killing me." The voice was perfect. It sounded exactly like Evander when he was a little boy, scared and in pain. Odelia's face crumpled. "Evander!" she cried from the doorway. Thaddeus took a step forward, his face twisted with panic. "What the hell are you doing to my son?" Jericho didn't stop chanting. He kept reading, voice steady, even as Evander thrashed and screamed inside the circle. The candles flickered wildly. Though there was no wind, the demon changed tactics. It made Evander's body contort into impossible positions, bones cracking and popping. Then it spoke again, this time using Evander's adult voice, sobbing. "Mom! Dad! Help me, please!" Odelia broke. She dropped the shotgun and ran into the room. "Stop it! You're hurting him!" Thaddeus followed right behind her, eyes wild. He looked around desperately and spotted a plastic bucket, half filled with dirty water that had been used to mop the floor earlier. Without thinking, he grabbed it and hurled the water straight at the circle. The salt dissolved instantly. The chalk symbols smeared and washed away. All 4 candles hissed and went out with thin trails of smoke. The protective circle was destroyed in seconds. Evander collapsed to the floor, gasping and twitching. The demon inside him let out a long, triumphant laugh. Odelia dropped to her knees and pulled her son into her arms, crying, "Evander, baby, Mama's here. Mama's here." Thaddeus stood over Jericho, breathing hard, still holding the empty bucket. His face was red with rage and fear. "You son of a bitch," he growled. "You were trying to kill him. I knew it. I fucking knew it the second I saw you." Odelia looked up at Jericho with pure hatred in her eyes, tears still streaming down her face. "You black bastard," she spat. "You came into our house pretending to help, but you were just waiting for a chance to hurt our son. All you people are the same, jealous of white families, always looking for ways to destroy us. You wanted to burn our boy alive so you could feel powerful." Jericho slowly closed his book. He looked at the ruined circle, at the destroyed candles, at Evander lying limp in his mother's arms. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he let out a quiet, tired sigh. He began packing his tools back into the canvas bag without hurry. The salt, the chalk, the cross, the book. He moved methodically, as if this had happened before. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. "The demon is laughing at all of you right now," he said. "It used your love for your son against you. And it used your fear and your hatred against me." He looked directly at Odelia and Thaddeus. "You just gave it more time to finish what it started." He stood up, slinging the bag over his shoulder. "I'll be outside," he said quietly. "If you change your mind before it's too late, you know where to find me." Without another word, Jericho walked past them and out of the room. His boots echoed down the hallway, then faded as he stepped out onto the porch and into the cold Texas night. Odelia held Evander tighter, rocking him like a child. Thaddeus stood in the middle of the ruined circle, bucket still in his hand, staring at the empty doorway where Jericho had disappeared. From somewhere deep in the house, the demon laughed again. Soft, delighted, and very much awake, night had fallen over the Texas plains like a heavy blanket. The wind outside had picked up, whistling through the cracks in the old wooden house and making the boarded windows creak. Inside, the air felt wrong. Too still, too cold. Thaddeus stood in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear. His face was grim as he listened to one of his workers at the store. There had been a break-in. Someone had smashed the back window and stolen several expensive pieces of farming equipment. He needed to go deal with the police and secure the place. He hung up and looked at Odelia, who was sitting at the table, staring blankly at the wall. "I have to go," he said. "The store's been robbed. I'll be back as soon as I can." Odelia didn't answer right away. Her eyes were red from crying. She had spent the last hour holding Evander in the ruined room while the boy drifted in and out of consciousness. Every time he woke, he would whimper or mutter things that didn't make sense. "Don't leave me here alone with him," she whispered. Thaddeus rubbed his face with both hands. He looked exhausted and scared. "Don't have a choice. We can't lose the store. Just lock the doors. Don't go near his room if he starts acting up again. I'll be back before midnight." Odelia nodded numbly. "Chief." She watched her husband grab his keys and jacket, then walk out the front door. The sound of his truck starting and driving away left the house feeling even emptier than before. She sat in the kitchen for a long time, listening to the wind. The shotgun was still on the table in front of her, but she hadn't touched it since Jericho left. Every few minutes, would glance toward the hallway that led to Evander's room. The house was getting colder. At first, she thought it was just the night air coming through the cracks. But the temperature kept dropping. Soon, she could see her own breath in front of her face. She got up and turned on the heater, but the air coming out of the vents felt lukewarm at best. Something was wrong. She walked slowly down the hallway toward Evander's room, carrying a small bowl of warm porridge she had made earlier. Maybe if he ate something, he would feel better. Maybe the worst had already passed. The door to his room was half open. The candles Jericho had used earlier were still scattered on the floor, their wax melted into the wood. The salt circle had been completely destroyed. "Evander?" she called softly. "Mama brought you some food." There was no answer. Odelia pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. The room was freezing. The single light bulb overhead flickered weakly. She looked around and didn't see him at first. Then she heard it, a soft scraping sound above her. She slowly raised her eyes. Evander was on the ceiling. He was crawling across it like a lizard, his fingers and toes gripping the wooden beams with unnatural strength. His head was twisted completely around so that he was looking down at her while his body faced the other way. His eyes were fully white again. A thin line of drool mixed with blood hung from his mouth and dripped onto the floor below. Odelia froze, the bowl of porridge slipping from her hands and shattering on the floor. Evander, or the thing wearing his body, smiled. It was a wide, unnatural smile that stretched too far across his face. "Hello, Mother," it said in that high, mocking voice. "Did you miss me?" Odelia took a shaky step back. Her voice came out as a broken whisper. "Evander, baby, please." The demon crawled a few more feet across the ceiling until it was directly above her. Its neck remained twisted at that horrible angle. "Evander isn't here right now," it said sweetly. "He's sleeping. He's been sleeping for a long time." It dropped from the ceiling. Odelia screamed and stumbled backward, but the demon didn't attack immediately. It landed in a crouch and slowly stood up, tilting its head as it studied her. "Do you know why I'm here?" it asked. "Do you know why this house was so cheap?" Odelia's back hit the wall. She couldn't look away from those white eyes. The demon continued, its voice dripping with cruel amusement. "Because I was already here. The last owner made a deal. He gave me his soul in exchange for power. But he was weak. When he died, I stayed. I waited. And then you came along, so greedy, so proud of your little bargain. You bought this house without asking questions. You offered your son to me without even knowing it." It took a slow step toward her. 6 years I've been feeding on him. 6 years of slowly eating his mind, his soul, his will, and you never noticed. You were too busy being proud of how smart you were for getting such a cheap house. Delia's legs gave out. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, tears streaming down her face. The demon crouched in front of her, its face only inches away. Its breath smelled of blood and rot. "I'm going to finish what I started tonight," it whispered. "I'm going to eat what's left of your son, and then I'm going to eat you. I'll start with your throat. I want to feel your soul scream as I pull it out." It lunged. Odelia threw her arms up to protect her face, screaming. The demon's mouth opened wide, rows of sharp teeth glistening as it went for her neck. But it never reached her. Mid-air, the demon suddenly stopped, as if it had slammed into an invisible wall. It let out a piercing, agonized shriek. Its body began to smoke, black tendrils rising from its skin. It thrashed and clawed at the air, howling in pain. Odelia stared in shock. Through the half-boarded window, she could see outside. Jericho Kincaid was still there. He had never left. Since late afternoon, he had been walking around the entire foundation of the house, pouring salt and drawing massive symbols in the dirt with white chalk. Now, he was kneeling in the center of a huge circle that completely surrounded the house. His leather jacket was covered in dust and dirt. In one hand, he held his old book, and he was reading from it steadily, his voice carrying through the night, even though Odelia couldn't make out the words. The massive protective circle was glowing faintly in the darkness. Inside the room, the demon screamed again and backed away from Odelia, clutching its head. Black smoke poured from its mouth and eyes. Odelia looked from the suffering demon to the window, then back again. Something inside her chest cracked open. All the hatred, all the pride, all the ugly words she had thrown at Jericho earlier that day came rushing back to her. She had called him filthy. She had accused him of wanting to rape and rob them. She had let her husband destroy his ritual because she couldn't stand the sight of a black man trying to help her son. And the entire time, he had been outside, working in silence to protect them anyway. Odelia covered her face with both hands and began to sob. Deep, broken sobs that shook her entire body. "I'm sorry," she whispered through her tears. "I'm so sorry." The demon let out one final furious roar and retreated into the shadows, its body still smoking. It crawled back up onto the ceiling and disappeared into a dark corner, hissing in pain. Odelia stayed on the floor, crying until she had no tears left. For the first time in her life, the wall of prejudice and arrogance she had built around herself had completely collapsed. Outside, Jericho Kincaid continued reading from his book, kneeling in the dirt under the cold Texas stars, protecting a family that had done nothing but insult and reject him. Odelia slowly got to her feet. She walked to the window and pressed her hand against the cold glass, watching the man outside who refused to give up on her son. For the first time, she truly understood what kind of man Jericho Kincaid was, and she had never felt smaller in her entire life. Thaddeus's truck came roaring back up the driveway just before dawn. The headlights cut through the darkness as he slammed on the brakes and jumped out, leaving the engine running. He had driven like a madman after finishing at the store, his mind filled with nothing but images of his wife and son alone in that cursed house. He burst through the front door, shouting, "Odelia! Evander!" He stopped dead in the living room. Odelia was kneeling on the floor near the hallway, her face streaked with tears. She looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. For the first time in years, there was no pride or anger in her expression. Only exhaustion and something close to shame. Before Thaddeus could ask what happened, they both heard it. Footsteps on the porch, slow, steady footsteps. The front door opened. Jericho Kincaid stepped inside. He looked tired. His leather jacket was covered in dirt and salt. His face was streaked with sweat and dust. In one hand, he carried his old book, Chief. In the other, he held a simple wooden cross that seemed to glow faintly with its own inner light. Odelia and Thaddeus stared at him. Neither of them moved to stop him this time. Jericho looked at them quietly for a moment, then spoke in a low voice. "I'm going to finish this. Either help me or stay out of the way." Odelia slowly got to her feet. Her voice was hoarse from crying. "Do what you have to do." Thaddeus looked between his wife and Jericho. For a second, the old anger flared in his eyes, but it died quickly. He stepped aside without a word. Jericho nodded once and walked past them toward Evander's room. The moment he crossed the threshold, the temperature in the house plummeted again. The lights flickered violently. From inside the room came a long, furious hiss. Evander was no longer on the ceiling. He was standing in the middle of the room, back arched unnaturally, head tilted at an impossible angle. His white eyes locked onto Jericho the second he entered. The demon spoke through him, voice dripping with venom. Look who came crawling back. The little black preacher who thinks he can play with things he doesn't understand. Jericho didn't flinch. He stepped into the room and placed the glowing cross on the floor in front of him. He opened his book and began reading in Latin, his voice calm and steady. The demon laughed, a horrible screeching sound. You really think your little prayers can save this boy? He's already mine. His mother sold him to me the day she bought this house. Greedy white bitch couldn't resist a cheap deal, could she? Odelia, standing in the doorway, flinched but didn't look away. The demon continued, its voice growing more vicious as it targeted Jericho directly. And you filthy nigger, you think you're better than us? You think your God wants anything to do with a black bastard like you? You should be on your knees serving white people, not pretending you can cast out demons. Go back to the gutter where you belong. Jericho's voice never wavered. He kept reading, louder now. The demon screamed in rage and lunged. Evander's body moved with impossible speed, claws slashing toward Jericho's face. But Jericho raised the glowing cross. The moment it touched Evander's chest, the demon howled in agony and was thrown backward across the room. Thaddeus and Odelia watched in horror as the battle intensified. The demon fought dirty. It used every racist slur it could think of, trying to break Jericho's focus. Black monkey. You think you're a man of God? You're nothing but a slave playing dress-up. Your kind doesn't belong in holy places. Jericho's face remained calm, though sweat poured down his forehead. He raised his voice, calling out a name in ancient Latin, the true name of the demon. The words seemed to shake the entire house. Evander's body convulsed violently. Black smoke began pouring from his mouth and eyes. The demon let out one final, desperate roar. You can't have him. He's mine. Jericho stepped forward and pressed the glowing cross firmly against Evander's forehead. Now, he commanded, voice like thunder. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, leave this child. Evander's back arched one last time. A horrifying, multi-layered scream tore from his throat. The demon's true voice mixed with Evander's. Then, with a final explosion of black smoke, the demon was ripped out of his body. The smoke twisted in the air for a moment, forming a grotesque, screaming face before it dissolved completely with a sound like tearing flesh. Evander collapsed. His body hit the floor limply. For several long seconds, he didn't move. Then he took a deep, gasping breath. Color slowly returned to his skin. His eyes fluttered open, brown and clear for the first time in 6 years. Mom, he whispered weakly. Dad? Odelia let out a broken sob and rushed forward, pulling her son into her arms. Shh. Thaddeus dropped to his knees beside them, tears streaming down his face as he held both of them. Jericho stepped back quietly. He watched the family for a moment, then turned and walked out of the room without a word. The sun was rising when Evander finally woke up properly. He was lying on the couch in the living room, covered with blankets. His parents sat beside him, looking exhausted but relieved. For the first time in years, he looked like himself again. No white eyes, no twisted smile, no unnatural voice. Odelia had spent the last hour crying and apologizing to him. Even though he didn't fully understand what had happened, she kept touching his face as if making sure he was real. I need to thank him, she said suddenly, standing up. I need to thank that man properly, Chief Chi. She walked into the kitchen, expecting to find Jericho there. The room was empty. She checked the living room again. Nothing. Her heart sank. She walked slowly to the old wooden table near the window. On it sat a small pile of salt and a folded piece of paper. Odelia picked up the note with trembling hands. The handwriting was neat but slightly rushed. Demons enter through greed and hatred, but love will seal the door to your home. Be at peace. Odelia covered her mouth as fresh tears filled her eyes. Thaddeus came up behind her and read the note over her shoulder. He didn't say anything. He simply placed a hand on his wife's back. Outside, through the dusty window, they saw Jericho's old rusted pickup truck driving away down the long dirt road. It grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared into the morning haze. Evander sat up weakly on the couch and looked toward the window. "He left?" he asked quietly. Odelia nodded, unable to speak. The three of them stood together in silence, watching the empty road where Jericho had gone. None of them knew his full story. None of them knew where he was going next. But they all understood the same thing. A man they had insulted, rejected, and driven away had still saved their son, and had done it without asking for anything in return. Odelia sank to her knees beside the table, clutching the note to her chest as she cried. This time, her tears weren't just from relief. They were from shame, gratitude, and the painful realization of how wrong she had been. Thaddeus knelt beside her and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Evander watched them quietly, still weak but finally free. Outside, the Texas sun continued to rise over the dry plains, casting long golden light across the old wooden house that had once been a prison. For the first time in 6 years, the Rollins family was whole again. And somewhere out on the long, empty road, a rusted blue and white pickup truck kept driving, carrying a quiet man who had done what he came to do, and then disappeared without waiting for thanks. In the end, the story of the Rollins family teaches us a powerful lesson. Never judge or discriminate against someone because of the color of their skin. Odelia's hatred and prejudice almost cost her everything: her son, her family, and her own humanity. But in her darkest moment, it was the very person she had insulted and rejected who stayed and risked everything to save them. Jericho didn't help because of their skin color. He helped because it was the right thing to do. True evil doesn't care about race, and true goodness doesn't either. So let this story be a reminder to all of us. Look at people's hearts, not the color of their skin. Hatred only opens the door for darkness. But love, compassion, and humility can close it forever. Thank you so much for watching until the end. I really appreciate you taking the time to follow this story with me. If you enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you think. Thank you again for your support. See you in the next story. Take care, and remember to treat everyone with kindness.